Hi everyone, and welcome back to Parkitect. So, last time we completed the Chinook Airfield campaign, and today we're going to be moving on to Victoria Lake. So, this is just a big lake, and we've been given all this land, and we have to try and make a successful park. We have the goals of having 300 guests, and the additional goal for the first time of having no loan debts, which is going to be a little bit trickier than the other two scenarios because we could have as many debts as we wanted in Chinook Airfield and in Maple Meadows, but in Victoria Lake, we can't have any debts if we want to complete the scenario goals, but we also have the goals of getting 100 and 200 guests, which I assume are going to unlock things as we work our way up to 300 guests, and then we can also try to complete the non-optional goals by the end of September of the second year. And for Maple Meadows and Chinook Airfield, I said I wasn't going to try and complete the optional goals, and I didn't try, and I ended up getting them done anyway. I don't know how it's going to be with Victoria Lake, but we'll see. We'll see how everything goes. So we're just going to load it up for the first time. So we are only given 18,000 this time, which is a little bit less than we have been given for the past two scenarios. We get this nice little entrance path though, which is definitely a good starting point. But other than that, there's like nothing. Just a big path going around this lake. Lots of room for expansion, I think. I'm pretty sure we unlock land over here. And then there's also this castle, which maybe can serve as inspiration later on. I don't know if that's exactly the vibe that I want to go for, though. We'll see. And there's a little water fountain in the middle of the lake, which is kind of tiny compared to the size of this massive lake, but, you know, it serves as a nice feature. So I definitely want to make sure that the guests have a clear view of the lake as they walk in. So normally I would put something here, but I don't know, I kind of like the idea of just having the water here, or maybe a carousel fit, but then it wouldn't be centered. I don't know. But let's go over the rides that we have. We have the carousel, the Ferris wheel, and the spiral slide, which is very generic. We get some different thrill rides, though. We have the Gravitron and the Wipeout, which we've had before, but I don't think we've had the swinging ship as a ride that we don't have to unlock, and we definitely haven't had access to the top scan yet, which is going to be good for getting some high-ish intensity rides right off the bat. And then we're given the junior coaster and the wooden coaster, which I'm particularly excited about because we haven't gotten to build one of these yet, and it might fit the vibe of this park pretty well. We're also given the miniature railway, and that might be a nice addition because this is a lot for our guests to walk around. So maybe I'll have a train station somewhere over here going around the lake. And then we're also given paddle boats to go on the lake, which could also be nice. Maybe somewhere over here, or over here, or over here. And then I always forget to go over the shops. So I remembered this time. We were given burgers, the customizable shop, which we're probably going to end up using for all of these. And then we also get hot dogs and the info kiosk, soft drinks, toilets, umbrellas, and then the vending machine. So definitely going to make use of the customizable shops again. And in terms of decorations, we are given the generic theme, the medieval theme, the steamworks theme, and the science fiction theme, as well as the Western theme, Candyland theme, and the adventure theme. So I don't think we've had the Candyland theme or adventure themes before, so that's going to be exciting. I don't think I'm going to theme this to adventure or Candyland, but we can make use of some of the pieces, these pyramid pieces. I've seen people use this like roofs, so we'll see where everything goes, but I'm gonna head out now and get into our first time-lapse segment. Bye! Alright, so this is gonna be a pretty long video, because this park took me much longer than any other. So this is about 20 hours of gameplay footage sped up to fit in an hour and 10-ish minutes, I think. So we're starting off with a very typical main street, which is, I think, the first real sort of main street that we've put down in one of these parks before, and I was very inspired by Disney Main Street, and so when I went to find references, I found out that apparently the Disneyland Main Streets are based off this town in Missouri that Walt Disney grew up in. So I went and searched up buildings in that town and took a lot of inspiration from that. And these 3 buildings that you'll see kind of go in like a row over here on this side of the entrance path, and these are probably the most detailed buildings I've ever made in this game, and I am really happy with how they came out. There's just like a lot of pieces that I haven't played around with too much, so it's really nice to be able to use these pieces, and I have to give huge props to the Parkitect team for making such a versatile game. It's so easy to like use all of these different pieces that are not meant for these specific things, and to kind of use them and create your own sort of style. So that's something I really appreciate about this game. So we're pretty much finishing the second building, which again is inspired by a building I found in Marceline. I don't know if it's still there, the picture was pretty old, but definitely going for like a small, towny, like American feel. Which brings us to probably my favorite building of these 3, which is the corner building. And I wanted to have this kind of regal, almost, corner building, because, I don't know, it's just like a thing that you see a lot in theme parks, is the corner buildings are always the most elaborate. So I wanted to sort of get that vibe through the limited diagonal building of Parkitect, which was tricky, and this is not the first diagonal building I've attempted, but probably the first that I've left in one of these parks, I think. And I really like the way it came out. It was tricky. I had to make use of a lot of different pieces because I wanted these buildings, or not buildings, I wanted these windows. And so you see me kind of struggling to get the look that I was going for, but eventually it gets there. You just have to find like the right pieces. So I'm using the pyramid pieces and pillars and the new octagon shape, or octagonal prism, I think is what that is. And it all just like kind of comes together to make a window. And it kind of matches the feel of the windows that come in the game, which is what I was going for. And I also used a lot of the really big, chunky pillars that come with the adventure theme, since we hadn't been able to use that prior to this scenario, I wanted to give that a shot, and it turned out nice. It kind of reminds me of, you know, that like little trim that's like under the windows. So I use a lot of those pieces, the pillar pieces, and the cable bracket piece. And in these buildings is just shops and toilets, and that's it. And we work a little bit on the backstage elements of this park, more so than usual, because I wanted it to be kind of realistic. So I just totally cleared out what was already there and just replaced it with the same tree anyway, so I don't know why I did that. And here you see me working on the backstage a little bit more. I put an AC unit on top of the brick building eventually. I think I do that later though. And now I'm just moving on and developing this area a little bit more with a Ferris wheel. So I know that I said that I wanted the guests to have a very uninterrupted, unobstructed view of the lake, but I felt like the Ferris wheel just really belonged there. And it would be really nice to be on that Ferris wheel and get a nice view of the lake from a little bit of a higher position than you would just standing on the ground. And I don't really like Ferris wheels in real life, but this one I'd probably make an exception for that rule. And I put string lights down. I just love string lights. I think they make everything look more cohesive and sort of cozy in a way. And here I was playing around with putting more flat rides, and I eventually just put down a coaster. So here you see me working on that, and this didn't take too long. It was a little bit of a struggle getting the coaster back to the station, but other than that, it was pretty simple. I wanted it to go over the lake for a pretty long time, but eventually I ended up just not doing that. It was just easier and felt a little bit better to keep it on the land, even though it would have been a nice element. Definitely something unique to this park. Just didn't work out. And it's a very short layout, but once I got that like final curve in, it just kind of fit. I ended up actually having to load back a previous save about 5 or so hours of gameplay in, because there was a crash that killed people on this coaster, which was surprising. I don't think I've ever had that happen, and it was, I don't know, I think like one of the brakes failed or something, but yeah, it was really sad that all those people died, but it's okay because they came back to life. Anyway, we're working on the station now, and I end up tearing the station down and starting over completely because about at this point I decided that I wanted this park to emulate different styles of architecture from different countries, and what I was going for here was a sort of German style, and I was happy with it at first. It was just based on like some reference image that I found of a cabin, and eventually I just didn't think it represented Germany in the best way. I don't think someone would be able to look at that building and say that it's German, so I do redo it, and now I'm just doing the last little bit of the main street, trying out some, what's it called, shutters on the outside of the windows with pillars. This building's probably not my favorite. These two buildings that I put here are not my favorites. I like the other side of the main street a lot better, but, you know, they serve their purpose. I had to put a staff room down because the staff always complains when I don't put one down, so this time I made sure I had one. And this is a kind of pink stucco building. There's a lot of there's like 3 different pink buildings in this park. I found so many different references of pink walls, so definitely wanted to give that a shot, because I don't think I've played around with pink so much, but pink is such a nice, bright, and like lively color. I feel like it's a very happy color, which might be why so many theme parks use it so much. And just filling up some of the area with foliage and putting down these little squares everywhere. So sorry for the very rapid camera movements. Like I said, this is at 30 times speed, so things get a little bit erratic, which, isn't optimal, but I think it's better to have sort of a wild camera than sitting here for 3 hours, which is what this video would be if it wasn't so fast. So here I'm just detailing the station, which, was, I guess, in retrospect, a waste of time, but it's always nice to play around with this game. I always have such a great time. And there I just took out a loan because I wanted to expand this area a bit more by adding a pirate ship ride inspired by the German pirates, which I didn't know were a thing before I started this playthrough, but Google told me that there were a lot of German pirates, so I figured I could have the pirate ship to represent them. So we're just working on adding some custom supports now, which was a recommendation by the Parkitect Discord, which is really helpful for getting just like tips and tricks and having people tell you what they think about your work. So I added those custom supports because the roller coaster looked like it was floating, and I wanted this to have a semblance of reality. So covering up this queue, which goes under the track, because another thing that I've learned is that almost every single time that there's track going over somewhere where guests walk, there needs to be something protecting them from things slipping out of people's pockets on the ride and such. So anytime that the track goes over this queue, there should be a little thing covering it. I might let a little bit of track slip here and there without anything to protect the guests' heads, but, it's a game, so it's not that big of a deal. And here I'm adding the centerpiece of this area, which is a Bavarian maypole, which is from the May Day festival, I believe, or the May Day holiday, which is celebrated in a lot of European countries. And so I wanted to have this maypole with flowers and just have it nice and tall for everyone to see and to kind of attract the guests to this area. I replaced those banners with the flag item. I don't know why I didn't do that at first. Kind of seems like a no-brainer, but now we're working on a deck, and there's 3 of these in total in the park, and they're all inspired by the architecture style of their respective countries. So this was sort of riffing off of the pirate ship decor, sort of a similar style, and here you see me replacing the banners with flags. And now that I discovered all of the props, I wanted to go back into what I'd already built and spruce it up with some of the different pieces. And a little trick that I don't know where I got it from, probably from watching some video, is to get rid of supports. You can sink small trees down into the ground and put them right under the support, and especially underwater you don't really see it all that much. So when you want custom supports, it's a nice thing to be able to hide the supports that come with the game. And now I'm decorating the pirate ship, so I wanted to sort of customize this ride and put some lights and supports all over it to give it a more piratey feel, I guess. And I really like pirate themes. I think pirate is a really good theme for parks. I don't know if I've ever been to a park with a pirate theme. I've been on rides with pirate themes, but I'm not sure about like full pirate areas, which might be something fun to explore. And we're almost done with this German area. For now, I go back and add a sort of food court here later, but only after working on the next chunk. And I think maybe there is when I reloaded because of the crash. Now, I'm not totally sure. But yeah, I had a really great time working on this, and this little corner at first I thought was my favorite part of the park, but then eventually my favorite part of the park becomes a future part that you'll see in a little bit. Something that we haven't ran into in this time-lapse, I don't think, is the really horrible weather in this scenario. It rains so much. It's like constantly raining, which is a bit of a bummer because everything looks so gloomy in the rain in this game. It can be nice sometimes, but not for this park. I wanted it to be really bright and happy. And now we're moving on to the next area, which I started without a theme in mind and just wanted it to sort of go with the flow. And that experience ride, I end up removing that and replacing it with the Twister, I think is what it's called. So eventually this area turns into Italy, and the big sort of centerpiece of this area is this giant wooden coaster, which took me so long. It like probably 5 tries of like having a fully finished layout until I got it right. So this was definitely a struggle, and I'm gonna have to cut out a lot of this. But I also do want to keep, just a little bit of the previous incarnations of this roller coaster in here so that y'all can see sort of the process. This wasn't really inspired by any roller coaster in real life other than El Toro, I think is what it's called, which has a sort of up and down section and then like a sort of weaving through itself section. It's kind of like 2 different parts. And that was what I was going for originally, and then it kind of just molded into whatever this is. So we're wrapping up now. This sort of getting back to the station was tricky, but eventually I get it to where I'm happy enough with it to leave it alone. So you just see me messing around with that, loading and unloading, and I was going through it. This one section took me like about as long as the rest of the coaster, and then I just blueprinted it and moved it. And this queue also gets shifted around all over the place. I don't know why. Like, this spot where it is right now is probably better than what I ended up going for. But right here is where I decided that I wanted this to be an Italian-inspired area. So I wanted it to have the centerpiece, which was like one of those Italian marble-ish structures. And ended up not doing that, and instead having this ride be inspired by those structures instead. So we have sort of a column backdrop as like the barrier between the ride and like the land. And there you see me replacing it with the twister because I wanted to have these walls and the experience ride kind of clipped through them, and the twister doesn't. So just put the twister down, and right now we were making a good amount of money. We end up kind of struggling a little bit with the money later on, but at the end of this scenario, the money was not something I was worried about at all, which was really nice to just be able to do whatever I want. I wish real life was like that too. So I used the shield prop to decorate a little bit more, and this was kind of like a more fancy Italian area, and then I decided to have almost a second main street on this path, sort of blocking the wooden coaster, and that's inspired by just, Italian streets, and having it right next to the lake was really nice too, because I know that a lot of Italian structures are built like right up against the water, so it definitely helps to get that feeling across. And this is our second sort of pavilion deck area, which is a lot fancier than the one in the German area, but it functions the exact same. It's just good to have these seating areas so that the guests don't get too tired, and they still get tired. Guests get tired no matter what. Unless I had like a bench on every single possible tile, I feel like I'm still gonna get complaints. And I have these, what are they called? Sort of, I don't know what they're called. The things, like the wooden slats, with flowers on top, which came up a lot when I was looking for Italian references, so I made sure to have some of those in there. And now I'm going in and putting down some more path details and trying to tie this area together, because I really was excited to move on to the Main Street-ish Italian buildings that I was going to put here. So this was a little bit rushed, I guess, and you can see I kind of just going all over the place, but finally settling down and starting my favorite part of this park, which is this row of buildings, and I'm so proud of these. I'm really happy with how they came out, and these were inspired by Lego sets that I found. There are so many Lego sets out there, and Lego is a really good place to look for inspiration when it comes to this game, because the blocky style is really similar. And this area it didn't take too long, which is what I think I like about it, but it's still detailed, and it looks like I put a lot of effort into it, which, I did. I put effort into it, but definitely put more effort into the main street. But, sometimes it doesn't matter how much effort you put into something, you just like something else better, and that's how I feel about these buildings. And I used that little trick of having the cube shapes sort of form brick pillars and columns to line the buildings. And yeah, there's just a few of these sort of 2x2 brick-ish rocky buildings. This one's a little bit more fancy. It has this nice tower. I used the cylinder shape on the 45-degree angle to make these like edge pieces to go on the roofs because a lot of the roofs that I saw had a sort of tile trim to them, and I wanted to replicate that to the best of my ability. So, not perfect, but close enough. And, with the style of this game, a lot of the times you don't have to make something completely accurate. As long as you get the idea across, that's what matters, because, you're looking at it from a distance. This game is sort of isometric. Not exactly, but kind of that same feel to where you're not super immersed in the park. It's more of, you're some otherworldly creator. So here's another pink building, which, like I said, I fell in love with pink walls while I was making this park. Now I want to paint all the walls in my room pink, and the outside of my house too, because, I don't know, I think I might have just fallen in love with pink. And now I'm putting down the rowboats, which I researched, and these felt so perfect for this area because you see those really long boats in Italy, going through the rivers right next to the buildings, like under the bridges and stuff. So I wanted to have a similar feel, just with a lake instead. And now I'm covering up the rowboat sort of station. I don't know if you would call it a station exactly. And it's not very Italian. It's kind of just like a generic roof, because I, for some reason, could not find references on like what the entrance area of the boats in Italy looks like. Because I assume you have to dock the boat somewhere. I don't know. Google wasn't being very helpful. But these next buildings are inspired by the Italian countryside. So it's kind of a gradient from very lavish and luxurious Italian structures to typical, streets of Italy into the countryside. And these are really nice too. They're less detailed, which makes sense because, this is the countryside, so there's less emphasis on extravagance and things like that. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with these too. They're not as colorful, they're a little bit more drab, but that's what I saw in my references, so that's what I tried to do. And yeah, I'm happy with how it came out. I cluttered it up a little bit because every picture I saw had barrels and like crates everywhere, so wanted to replicate that as well. And also working a little bit on the back side of the building because that's where the queue for the wooden coaster goes. So the backs of these buildings need to be presentable as well, which is a bit of a change of pace from most buildings in theme parks, which are just facades. These have a front and back side, and the staff path just goes through the buildings instead of right behind them. And now I was going to put down a diagonal building over here to sort of transition into the next area, but ended up not doing that because I could not make up my mind on what I wanted that to be exactly. I went through a lot of different countries in my head. You'll see what I end up landing on. I don't want to give it away just yet, but it's a whole third country, so 3 different country-themed areas in this park. And like I said, just working on the back side of these buildings, and then I wanted the roofs to be believably theme parky, so I ended up putting AC units and all that stuff, which is I guess, just what is on top of these buildings a lot of the time. You just can't see them because, you know, whoever is behind the scenes made sure that they were completely hidden from the guests' line of sight. So yeah, this is kind of a boring part, but this now is a little bit more fun again. We're finally working on the station of the wooden coaster, which normally I do a coaster, I build it, and then immediately work on the station, but for some reason I decided to hold off on theming this small little area until like the very last minute. So this is an Italian church. So my idea was you're in the countryside and this is a church that could be found there, even though it's right behind all of the other buildings. So it has this big tower, and this is, again, just inspired by pictures of Italian churches that I found. And I really like how this building came out. It's nicely detailed, but not too crazy detailed. A lot of the churches have these, I don't know what you would call them, just like tiny little spires on the corners of the roofs. So I tried to do that with shapes and pillars and that one spire item, which is one of my favorite items in the whole game. It's so versatile, which is really helpful when you're trying to do stuff like this, which isn't exactly handed to you. And now I'm doing some supports on the wooden coaster. And to be completely honest, I have no idea how wooden coasters are really supported. In my mind, it made sense that every wooden beam should be connected to the floor in some way. So if a part of the track is supported by a support that isn't touching the floor, then that support has to be connected to something touching the floor. Which, I don't know if that's how it works in real life, but that's what I did, and I think it came out looking believable. Wooden coasters, a lot of them, to me, just look like a mess of wooden beams, and it's really cool that way, and it's fun to ride and dodge all of the wooden beams, and it always feels like you're gonna hit your head on them. So that was kind of the feeling that I was going for. And now I'm just adding a little bit of foliage to the roller coaster area, and then doing the terrain paint under it to sort of give the illusion that maybe the grass under the tracks, you know, hasn't seen as much sunlight. So I do that with all of the roller coasters in this park, I think. I don't know, just one extra little thing that you can do to bring a little bit more detail into something you build. And there I recolored those sort of banner things to be the Italian flag. And here I'm trying again to sort of emulate the Italian flag. And now we're gonna redo this station because I was not very happy with it. And I like this version a lot more. I did something fun here where I used the hay bale prop item as shutters on the windows, because normally I would use the crates, except the crates were a little bit too big for what I was going for, and the hay bale, now that it's recolorable, you can, you know, make it any color, and it kind of gives the illusion of shutters. So here I was experimenting with different items, and the hay bale just kind of stuck. And when you recolor them to be any color other than like hay, it kind of has a wooden texture, or the texture is at least somewhat reminiscent of wood. So I felt like this was the perfect item to use. And I'm just detailing a little bit more. I'm definitely way happier with this station than I was with the previous station. You know, something about the previous station just didn't feel right. And there's my best recreation of the German flag, with what's possible in this game, because unfortunately we don't have flags with horizontal stripes, only vertical stripes. So any flag in this park that has horizontal stripes is gonna be a vertical reimagining of that design. And now I'm putting down an extra staff room because I was kind of realizing how big this park was going to be, and I needed more staff rooms. And this building is also going to get replaced by a pink building. So this was definitely, like, I like this building. It wasn't exactly what I was hoping it would be, so I decided to scrap it and go for something completely different. Just try and bring in different aspects of German architecture. So I found a reference of this really pretty pink building, and I'm doing my best to recreate that and reimagine it in my own style and bring life to it in this game. And the windows of this building are really, really fun. I use a lot of different items to try and get the look that I'm going for, because in the reference, the windows are very elaborate. So I use the treasure chest item to make that sort of detail on top, and then I used cannons and the weapons holder thing, and that all sort of came together to create this, which I'm really happy with. These windows are probably one of my favorite things I've ever made in this game. So very happy with how this turned out. And now I'm just putting some shops in there, and then I redo the backside of the building to try and get more of that backstage feel, because I'm going for a somewhat realistic park. Just adding some flags that were in the reference, some generic flags just to have some decoration, and then I found a building with this fun little spire on top, which I think may be a common element of European architecture, because all three different countries that I looked into references for had spires on top of the roof. So maybe that is an element which connects European architecture. I don't know. I'm not an expert on any architecture by any means. Really all I do is I have a theme in mind, and then I search up buildings of that theme and try and sort of mix different elements of them together into something cohesive. So I'm gonna finish up this lighting, and we'll be into our real-time segment. Hello, everyone. So I have a lot to go over. This is a much bigger park than I had originally imagined, but that's okay. And we're only, well, I'd say a little bit more than halfway done, but definitely still a lot of work to do. So I built this sort of Main Street area, and over time, the theme of this park sort of turned into an all-around-the-world kind of idea. So here was inspired by Germany and sort of Bavarian things, and over here is Italy. But that wasn't like the original plan. I was just gonna do like a generic theme park without like a theme per se. So these Main Street buildings are very generic and they don't really have a theme, which if I could go back and like redo everything, I guess I would find some country to theme all of this after, but I think it like transitions well into the two areas that we've worked on. So here is our Germany area. We have this maypole, and these are like my attempts at flags of Germany within the flags that we get to use in Parkitect. And then I did this over here where I layered them to sort of create the colors of the German flag. And over here, this is sort of piratey themed, after the German pirates. And then this building is just inspired by some building that showed up when I searched up German architecture, and I really liked it. It's nice and bright and pink, and sort of contrasts with the rest of the area, so I thought it was nice to show like different aspects of German architecture and culture. And then over here we have the Italy area, which is a little bigger, with this sort of, I guess, more classic Italian area, and this is inspired by like the streets of Italy, and then moving into the countryside. And then the station for this big wooden coaster was inspired by a church in Italy. So, sort of going through a bunch of different types of Italian structures. This wooden roller coaster is really big and fun. I really like it. The intensity is low, which could be better, but it's okay. I'll save the writing it for the final sort of going over everything. But I just wanted to take a quick little break to show everyone what's been going on. And we're going to be moving into this area over here, and probably doing something like Russian is what I'm thinking now, but that might change. We'll see. But yeah, I'll see you guys in a second. Okay, so we're kicking things off with building a big, not big, medium-sized looping coaster. So this particular model is called the Looping Star, and it's manufactured by, I think, Schwarzkopf is how you say it. I'm not totally 100% sure. Probably totally butchered that, but that's who manufactures this particular model, and I wanted to go for a sort of realistic approach to this coaster, which was fun, because it just does a loop and then does some sort of figure eights inside of itself, and that's kind of it. And I know that I said that this was going to be a Russian area, but someone on the Parkitect Discord, whose name I unfortunately don't know how to pronounce, suggested that I turn this into a Netherlands-inspired area, which I thought was a great idea. So, this is all inspired by the Netherlands, starting with the station, which was inspired by some museum that I found. I don't remember the name, but there's a museum in the Netherlands that kind of has this style, and I thought it was fun, and it looked fancy, to me, which I wanted this coaster to be because in my sort of story behind this park, this area is newer. So this was all built after the park has already taken off, and we have a lot more money now and we can kind of do whatever. So we can afford more expensive theming, like this station. I made this coaster a nice blue, which is probably my favorite color for tracks. I just feel like it looks so good with the green of the grass. Maybe in different scenarios which don't take place on grass, I'll have like another go-to color, but for now, I just love the way blue roller coasters look. And this little block of buildings is going to be inspired by Amsterdam, and it's just, again, like buildings that I found on Google, and I'm using their style and coming up with something of my own. And these are really fun too. They're a bit more modern, I think, than the rest of the theming in this park, which to me makes sense because, we're going with the idea that this is a new area. And here I was trying to put down a windmill because that is a big, like, famous element of the Netherlands. I feel like people think of the Netherlands and they think of a big windmill in, like, a field of tulips. So I wanted it to be on a diagonal really, really bad, but I could not figure out how to do the spinny part on a diagonal. I tried shapes, and I thought maybe the shapes were going to work for a little bit, but I ended up just going with walls and then putting it on the grid, and I end up moving it. So this is not the permanent position. I'm going to instead have a different building in this area to finish off that block of buildings. So this is probably, I don't know. I was gonna say it's my least favorite area, but maybe it's Germany that's my least favorite area of this park. Not Italy. Italy is my favorite. But yeah, so working on the building that I was just talking about, and this was fun. I found a building that had like an interesting topper almost on it, like an extra little block on top of the roof. And so I tried to recreate that, and then I also had to make sure that the side of this building looked presentable because the looping star goes right past it. So anything that the guests can see is going to be themed to the best of my ability. And then here I have the staff training room behind all of those buildings because we don't have one of those yet. And there I'm just putting down the windmill and adding a little bit of extra detail. And at this point in the process, I was sort of feeling a little bit burnt out, just because this park took so much longer than I was expecting, and there's so much area to cover. I wasn't exactly sure what to do, so I just kind of go all over the place, putting down whatever I kind of come up with in the moment. So there I just did a little bit of the queue, and then now I'm putting some lights on the windmill, and I think maybe subconsciously I was trying to avoid having to build more buildings because I had already done so many buildings, and I kind of just wanted to, get it over with. I think maybe I could have put down another roller coaster that could have, reinvigorated my spirit, because I was definitely getting a little tired. But now I found some more inspiration because I found online a Dutch fishing village, which I saw the picture and I was like, oh, I have to build this, because there were all of these cute little houses on stilts over the water, and, you know, this is a lake, so we have water, and we can put buildings on stilts over it. So I thought this was a perfect way to incorporate the Netherlands theming with the water in the park. And so this is a cute little restaurant with a nice outdoor seating area, and again having these sort of spires on top of the roofs. And I'm gonna expand this a little bit more. Had to find a way to squeeze in a depot so that these shops could get stocked without the haulers having to carry the crates all over, which the guests love to complain about. And I feel like, you know, when you go to a theme park, you see, like, things getting restocked. I feel like it doesn't always happen from the back. So, I don't think I've ever seen that, and it's sort of taken me out of the immersion of the park. But maybe the guests in this game have higher standards than I do. And now we're rounding this off with another building. I always find myself doing rows of buildings in groups of 3s. I feel like 2 is too little, and 4 is too many in a lot of cases, but 3 is a good number. And yeah, I'm all over the place right now because after I did the fishing village, I'm back to not knowing exactly what I want to do. So I realized that I had to cover up the queue a little bit more because the track was going over it. So I do that, and now I'm putting down some trees to bring some more greenery into this area because it felt a little bit dull. And now I'm just working on the supports for the wave swinger and doing some extra details on the queue covers, adding some string lights to make everything a little bit more homey, cozy. And for this area, that is about it. This time-lapse segment is much shorter than the first one because, I don't know, the first one I was just like on a roll and I didn't want to stop. So I probably could have taken a quick little break and gone over some stuff with y'all earlier than I did, but, you know, it's okay. And unfortunately, this time-lapse is going to be cut even shorter than it should have been because I ran out of storage on my computer and OBS just stopped recording, and I didn't realize it for like a good 2 hours. So, after putting down these custom supports, which are very iconic elements of this particular model of roller coaster, we're gonna go right into our park overview, and I'll make sure to go over the areas that we didn't cover in the recording. So with that being said, let's hop into our final real-time segment. Alright, everyone, welcome to Victoria Lake. So this is the 100% finished product. At least I think it's finished. Maybe while I'm showing everything, I'll find something that I missed, but I went for a sort of around the world theme, but it ended up being more around Europe, instead of around the world. But we'll go ahead and start with the first thing that I did, which was this main street, which I am very proud of. These are the most detailed buildings I've ever made in this game, and I think they came out pretty great. This isn't something I'm very used to doing, like these details using different pieces like pillars and props and like everything in the details tab. So it was really fun to try that out. And then on this side, these are a little less cool than these, but just something to fill up space. And here we have our sort of German Bavarian area with the swinging ship sort of themed off pirates from Germany. We have our junior coaster, and as you saw in the time-lapse, this station changed quite a bit, quite a big renovation, because it just wasn't giving Europe. I don't think it wasn't giving Germany. It was just giving roller coaster station. So I wanted to go ahead and fix that. There's no one on here right now. And then over here, this was just inspired by some building I found on Google when I searched up German architecture, and I think it came out pretty nice. It's very detailed. I was playing around with the props, so these are chests, and then I have cannons to make these tiny little bits that poke out. And then something else I wanted to do was have the backstage areas be a little bit more realistic, so the AC units and stuff like that. Moving on, we go over... Oh! I should ride this coaster. Totally forgot. Alright, so it just does, like, 3 helixes. It's super simple. But the guests don't seem to like it very much anymore. I think there's some sort of mechanic in this game which makes guests not like coasters as much the older they are. And as you can see, we're at year 17. So this was put in at like year 1. So in-game, this is like a 17-year-old roller coaster, so I can understand why maybe it's not the most fun anymore. But yeah, going over here, we have an area inspired by the Netherlands. So these buildings are very Amsterdam-y. They have a lot of buildings which are just like tightly grouped together. And these were some of the most popular colors that I found. So just some shops in here, and that's kind of it. And then moving on over here, this area was sort of inspired by a fishing village that I found, which had these buildings that were like on supports over the water. So this area is our sort of Dutch fishing village. And moving on to the steel coaster, which is probably the biggest moneymaker of the park. This area was inspired by, like, a museum that I found. I don't remember the name exactly, but this is a very fun coaster. I had a lot of fun putting this layout together because I was just following the, oh god, I forget what the company name is, but it starts with, like, a G. It's, like, Gert something. And it's their, like, looping coaster model, which has these, like, iconic supports holding the loop up. So it's a very simple layout. One thing about this scenario is that it rains so much. I feel like at least every 5 minutes it's raining and thundering, which makes it really hard to get the guests to ride rides that are out in the open. But because I have so many guests in the park right now, I don't think it's that much of an issue. But yeah, just a loop and then some figure 8 sort of action, and then right back into the station. It's a pretty quick ride. And nothing too special either. And then yeah, into the breaks. But the guests really like this ride. Not when it's raining, but when it's light out and when the sun is out, then the guests seem to like it a lot. And then here we have a big windmill, which was just, again, inspired by something I found on Google. And I struggled a lot with this. I could not figure out how to do the little fan part, like, you know, the actual windmill part. Ended up just going with walls, and I think it came out nice. It's a little simple. I would have liked to add more detail to it, but because of the shape of it, it's kind of hard. Here in this corner, tucked away, we have the experience ride, which is also a pretty big moneymaker. And here, this is one of my favorite buildings in the park, and I'm really upset that the footage did not record for this. Well, I tried, but I had like no storage left on my computer, and I thought I had more. So that's the story. So I'll give a little 360 of it, I guess, to make up for that. And yeah, this was just another case of me searching up Netherlands architecture and finding a nice building, and I thought it matched nicely with the station. This is sort of a more upper, I don't know, more money, I guess, than the fishing village. Yeah, I don't know much about the Netherlands, so I hope that the buildings are at least somewhat accurate. But it was a lot of fun trying out this sort of different style, especially this little fishing village. I really like it. And this roller coaster is probably my favorite in the park. But there's one more, which is the wooden coaster, which we can go ahead and ride now. And the supports will sort of get in the way of being able to see where the track is going, but I hope it's not too bad. And this wasn't really inspired by any real-life coasters. I just sort of did whatever, and it took me forever to get it right, and this is kind of the best that I could come up with. There's definitely some improvement to be made, but for my first wooden coaster of this scenario or campaign playthrough, I think it's okay. And as you can maybe tell by what we just flew under, this is our Italian area. So this station is inspired by an Italian church, and these are just some Italian buildings. I already went over a lot of this in the previous little real-time segment, so I don't know if there's too much more to say that I didn't already say, and to be honest, I don't remember much of what I said. But this is really fun. I had a really great time putting this together. It's probably my favorite part of the park, like this angle over here. And I think that's about it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you all enjoyed. This is probably going to be a pretty long video, and I might have to cut some of the time-lapse out because this definitely took me the longest out of the 3 scenarios so far. I could definitely see myself expanding into this area. Maybe at some point I'll revisit this park and do an expansion. We could explore different continents, not just Europe. But yeah, this was really fun. Oh! I totally forgot. I haven't actually beat the campaign because I have $1 of a loan left to pay. So let's go ahead and do that. And we should have it beat. There we go. It's like such a nice little way to end this video. So we'll wait for the confetti to rain all the way down and go ahead and save. Okay, so really quick interjection, because I forgot to record this. I wanted to show the park off at nighttime because I did some lighting work around, and I think it looks nice and bright, and from far away, it looks like this is like a real park, you know? Maple Meadows was pretty small, and Chinook Airfield was so long and awkward, but this to me feels like the first real, like, park, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I just wanted to show that off in case anyone was wondering what this looked like at night. That's kind of it. Okay. Back to whatever I was recording before. Whoa. Okay. So we get the castle that's on the hill that we don't get access to as our little building to remember this scenario. And now we should be unlocking Coral Caldera, which we're going to be visiting not next episode, but next episode, because I want to tackle Western Roundup. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be a very heavily themed Western park. I don't really know what I'm going to do exactly. Probably just different types of Western. Maybe I should watch some Western movies in preparation. But yeah, that's it for this episode of this the campaign playthrough. I always get those words mixed up. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you had a nice time watching this. Maybe you got to relax a little bit, or not. I'm not really sure. Yeah, okay. I've been talking for a bit too long now, so bye-bye.